He survived war, he buried his past, traded his rifle for a tool belt, and became just a working man. But the day his boss's daughter was taken, everything changed. He went after her himself. And what he found was not just one missing girl. It was a darkness no one expected. The movie starts with a former Special Forces soldier named Levon who wakes up in his car, which basically doubles as his home. Then he gets out and opens the gate to the site where he works. We find out Levon is a foreman for a construction company. The workers clearly love and respect him. One of them even brings him food his wife made just for Levon. He thanks him, then talks to the crew, hyping them up and letting them know they have a lot of work to finish on time today. He promises them a bonus if they pull it off, then leaves them to it and heads inside. He greets Carla and John, the owners. Their daughter Jenny, who does accounting, is there. For real, the way they talk to Levon, you can tell they consider him family. Jenny then asks John to give her his credit card so she can use it since she's going out with Ferrilians tonight. Levon smiles when John replies to Jenny telling her he does not want her going out and blowing cash, but she insists and John finally gives in. Just then Levon spots a car pulling up. Some guys get out looking like gang members and start beating up the worker Ferrilian earlier. Levon tries to talk to them calmly so they will let the guy go and leave, but one of them curses at him and tells him to back off. Levon snaps, throws nails at them and beats them down brutally. The worker is totally in shock by what Levon just did. Levon checks on him, then heads back to finish his work. Later, Jenny goes up to Levon. It turns out she saw him fighting. She asks if he was in the military because the moves he used during the fight prove he is a pro. She tells him her grandpa was a veteran and she's seen him do those exact moves before. She asks him to teach her a few moves so she can defend herself, but Levon brushes it off and tells her not to mention what happened to her parents. Jenny agrees and gives him food, saying her grandma made it just for him. That is because she knows Levon lives alone and does not have anyone to cook. Levon takes the food and tells her to thank her grandma. After Levon finishes work, he goes to visit his daughter Mary. He's shocked to find her grandpa Gordon throwing a party on his pickup day. He did this so Mary would refuse to go out with Levon, but it does not work. Mary runs up, hugs Levon, and gets in his car. Then Gordon shows up talking trash to Levon. He says he does not feel safe with Mary around him because drama always follows him. And because of the violence in his life, his wife paid the ultimate price and died. Gordon tries to provoke Levon into hitting him so he can use it in court for full custody, but Levon keeps his cool, tells him he had nothing to do with his wife's death and leaves. Later, Levon takes Mary out for lunch and gives her a gift, a picture of her with her mom. Mary tells him she is mad at her mom for dying and leaving them, and mentions that her grandpa hid all the photos of her mom. You can see Levon is still heartbroken over his wife. After that, he heads to his lawyer and tells him how Gordon's acting. The lawyer says Gordon has a huge legal team doing everything they can to win the custody case against him. The lawyer is confused about why Gordon hates Levon so much. Levon explains that Gordon blames him for his wife's death. We find out she died because she got depressed for Rin and him being away for work all the time, until she eventually decided to take her own life. The lawyer suggests Levon should talk to Gordon and smooth things over because he thinks Gordon will win custody, especially since Levon lives in his car. That's going to be a major reason he loses. Levon gets pissed and refuses to make peace. He gives the lawyer money to keep working on the case and tells him he will fix his housing situation as soon as possible. That night, Jenny goes out with her Ferrilian. They go out to a club and Jenny heads over to the bar. She asks the bartender David for a table for her and her Ferrilians. He says if she gives him her name, he will hook them up with a vet table, so Jenny tells him, finds out where the table is, and goes back to her Ferrilians. Right then, David texts a guy named Viper, who happens to work for a human trafficking ring. As soon as Viper gets the text, he grabs his partner Artie and they rush to the club. Meanwhile, one of Jenny's Ferrilians gets sick for drinking too much, so Jenny takes her to the bathroom, telling her she will wait right outside the door for her. The second Jenny steps out of the bathroom, Viper ambushes her, covers her mouth, and kidnaps her. The next day, Carla and John meet up with Levon and tell him Jenny has been missing since last night. Her Ferrilians say she just vanished after going to the bathroom at the club. Sean begs Levon to help them and look for her, since he is a military vet and has experience dealing with this kind of stuff. Levon tells him he left that life behind a long time ago because getting involved in any violence could cost him custody of his daughter. Sean offers him a ton of money to just take it and go find her. But despite that, Levon refuses and walks away. Later, Levon heads to his buddy Johnny's cabin in the woods. Through their talk, we find out Levon saved Johnny's life on a military mission they did together. Sadly, Johnny lost his sight back then, but he is still super grateful to Levon for saving him. Levon tells Johnny all about Jenny and what happened to her. It is obvious Levon wants to save her because he truly loves her like a daughter, plus he already promised her before that he would always have her back. But he is torn and terrified of losing custody of his own kid. Johnny encourages him to go save Jenny no matter the consequences. Levon listens to him and heads back to John, who was sitting there watching a video of Jenny playing the piano looking completely heartbroken. Levon finds out for real and John that Jenny actually got a scholarship to study music, but she turned it down to help him with the business. Levon reassures him and promises he is going to look for his daughter and will not come back without her. He then gets in his car and starts gathering info on Jenny's movements on the day she was kidnapped. He makes his way to the club where she was hanging out before it happened. While there, he spots David secretly dealing drugs to people. Under the radar, Levon figures David has to be tied to Jenny's disappearance. He slips out the back door and finds the security camera wiretap. He searches the area and finds a bead for real on Jenny's necklace. He realizes she was kidnapped and fought back. At the end of the night, David closes up and gets in his car. It turns out Levon planted a tracker on it and has been tailing him. Levon manages to pick the lock to David's place without him noticing. David is stunned when Levon bursts in holding a gun and snatches his own gun before he can even reach it. Levon pulls out Jenny's picture and asks about the guys who took her. David claims he does not know anything about it and says he already told the cops everything he knows. With nothing left to say, but Levon knows he is lying. So he drags him to the bathroom, throws him in the tub, covers his face, and turns on the water. David finally breaks, saying the people who took Jenny are extremely dangerous. He warns him to stop looking because if they find out they will kill his whole family, but Levon ignores him and demands he give him at least one of their names. Right then, two of David's associates show up and call out at him. The second David hears them, he screams out loud so he will save him. Levon grabs him and walks him out of the bathroom. Right then, the two guys open fire without hesitation, killing David, so Levon shoots back and takes them out. He grabs the cash they had on them, and after seeing their tattoos, he realizes they are Russian mafia. Levon stakes out a spot near David's house until the next day he sees two guys get out of a car with their boss, a guy named Paulo. Levon watches them go into David's house. Inside, Paulo is furious seeing his man dead. When he notices the money is missing, he realizes it is a robbery. He orders his men Danny and Vanko to find the guy who did this as soon as possible. Just then, Levon sees a cleaning company van pull up. Two girls get out to clean David's house and get rid of the bodies and evidence. Paulo then walks out. Danny and Vanko, they get in the car and speed off, so Levon tails them in his car until they reach Paulo's house. Levon parks nearby, grabs his gear for real in the car and hides out in the trees. He spies on Paulo's house and catches him beating his wife once she leaves. Levon goes in. The second Paulo sees him, he throws coffee in his face, but Levon beats him unconscious. When Paulo wakes up, he is tied to a chair suspended by a rope over the pool. Levon rips the tape off Paulo's mouth and Paulo asks if he knows who he is messing with. Levon replies that he knows exactly who he is and knows he works for the Russian mafia. Paulo warns him he made a huge mistake killing his man and stealing his money, and that his life's going to be hell and his family will die. But Levon is not fazed. He smacks him in the face, telling him that this for hitting his wife. Then he throws the money he took for real in David's place right in his face, saying he does not need his cash. He shows him Jenny's picture and says he wants this girl back with her family. He tells him she was taken at the club where they deal drugs. Paul gets pissed and starts ranting in Russian about a guy named Demi. Levon tells him he does not understand a word he is saying and demands he hand over Jenny if he wants to live, but Paulo just curses at him. So Levon cuts the rope and lets him drown. Was outside, Levon pulls out his phone. Turns out he was recording Paulo to run it through a translator. That is how he finds out Demi is the one behind Jenny's kidnapping. A bit later, the cleaning crew arrives, removes Paulo's body, and covers up the crime. Meanwhile, Paulo's brother Yuri shows up. We find out Danny and Vanko are Yuri's sons, and they console him. Yuri walks in grieving, then checks the security footage showing Levon telling Valo Yuri is completely shocked by Levon's audacity and wants to know why he would kill. His brother Yuri orders his sons to bring Levon to him alive so he can get his revenge personally. Meanwhile, we see Jenny where she is. Being help Artie comes in disguised, handing her food and some new clothes. She pulls a gun on Jenny, threatening her, saying she has to eat and put on the new clothes or she will kill her at the same time. Levon calls up an old military buddy of his who currently works for the D and asks him about Demi. His Ferrulian tells him about a club Demi owns where he pushes drugs. Without hesitating, Levon heads straight to that club at night. Meanwhile, Artie is watching the club through the security cameras. She gets suspicious of Levon when she notices a gun in his pocket. She asks her coworker Chi to go see what Levon wants. The second Chi sits next to him, Levon drops a stack of cash in for real one of him. Shady figures Levon wants to buy drugs, so he takes him to the gang leader Dutch. Artie then radios Dutch that Levon is strapped and says she thinks he is a cop. So Dutch asks Levon why he is carrying a gun. Levon tells him he carries it to protect himself for real and getting robbed. Since he's carrying a lot of cash, Dutch tells him to empty his pockets to prove he is not a cop, but Levon refuses and goes to walk away. That is when Dutch orders his guys to attack him. Levon clashes with Dutch's crew in a brutal fight and none of them stand a chance. Levon grabs one of them and is about to finish him off, so Dutch yells to stop the fight. He steps up to Levon, saying his combat skills are way above any cops and guesses he served in the military. Levon tells him he is an ex-soldier who now pushes weight and has a lot of clients in Chicago. He says he needs a new supply because his plug got busted. Explaining he will buy weight every month, Dutch tests him by throwing out a price. Levon tells him that is way higher than Chicago prices. Dutch realizes then that Levon is a real dealer and sets a meeting at a cafe the next day to deliver the goods. The next day, Levon shows up at the cafe, meets Artie and Chitty, and hands over the cash. They hand him a burner phone and tell him he will get a call with the drop location. Levon takes the phone, warns them not to cross him, and walks away. Later, Levon gets in his car and gets a call for real and Dutch, who tells him the drugs are right under his seat. He says he had to do it this way to make sure no one was tailing him. He adds that he will call him tomorrow to figure out how to deliver the bulk supply. Levon hangs up and dumps the drugs in the river that night. Viper and Artie deliver Jenny to her buyer. A guy named Garrett, when they ask why he wanted this specific girl, he says her picture reminded him of a painting he loves. He gives them a bag full of cash and gold. Garrett leaves them and goes inside to open the bag holding Jenny. But Jenny slashes his face the second he gets close. Garrett storms out to Viper and Artie screaming and demands they get her out of his house and kill her. Meanwhile, Levon is staying in a run-down apartment in the middle of nowhere. He is pinning up photos and intel on the wall when he gets a call for real and Dutch. He gives him the time and place to meet his boss to pick up the bulk order he asked for. The next day, Levon heads to the spot, which turns out to be a super fancy restaurant. Levon notices the whole place is crawling with armed guards. He gets patted down before meeting the gang leader and is stunned to find out the boss is actually Demi, the guy he's looking for. Before they even talk, Levon pulls out the cash for the drugs and hands it to Dutch. Demi asks Levon to show him some aid. So Levon hands him a fake aid he used back in his military days. One of Demi's guys takes it to run a background check, but the aid is a top-tier fake. The guy comes back and tells Demi it is completely clean. Demi then shakes Levon's hand and gives him the bag of drugs, telling him he is glad they will be doing a lot of business together. Later, Levon takes the drugs straight to the bathroom and flushes them. He goes back to his apartment and stares at the photos of Jenny and her Ferrulians at the club. He notices Viper in the photo staring hard at Jenny, completely focused on her. He checks David's phone and sees that he had been talking to Viper, meaning Viper is the one who kidnapped Jenny. Levon realizes Viper hangs out at the same club as Dutch's gang. So he heads to the club, sits in his car, and stakes out the place waiting for Viper. But Artie spots him on the security cameras. We find out she knows Danny and Vanko have been looking for Levon. She calls them and says he is parked right outside the club. They rush over, and the second Levon sees them, he jumps out of his car, steals a motorcycle out for real and takes off, but Danny and Vanko hop in their car and chase him. They keep shooting at him, but Levon manages to dodge them until he suddenly crashes into a cop car and falls to the ground. Levon is shocked to see the cops hand him over to Danny and Vanko for cash. They tie him up and throw him in their car. He finds out Valo, the guy he killed, was their uncle. Levon mocks them and their outfits, which pisses them off, and they go to hit him. But Levon fights back hard, so Danny tries to shoot him. Levon grabs his hand and pushes it away. The bullet hits the driver and blows his brains out. The car flips with all of them inside, but Levon manages to kill Danny and Vanko. He Realizes himself, gets out and pushes the car into the river. When Yuri finds out his sons are dead, he's crushed and calls a meeting with the rest of the mafia bosses. Meanwhile, Viper and Ari are with them, who is pissed that Jenny slashed the guy's face. Viper assures him it will not happen again and says he and Ari will take her and finish her off. Then find another girl to deliver to Garrett. Back to Yuri, who is meeting with the mafia bosses and tells them what happened. One of them decides to send two of his top hitters with him, Nestor and Sevi, telling Yuri these guys will finish off the man who killed his brother and son. Yuri takes them and heads to Demi, since he has got to know where Levon is, especially since he was parked outside his club. We then find out Demi is actually Volo's son, the same Volo Levon tossed in the pool. It turns out Demi and his dad had a lot of bad blood, so he is actually happy he is dead. But when Demi finds out Levon killed his cousins Danny and Vanko, he's shocked. He tells Yuri that Levon introduced himself as a drug dealer and shows him the he verified when they met. Yuri replies that Levon was after him, and because of him his brother and two sons are dead. He then walks off. Later, Nestor and Sevi track down all of Levon's info, and the next day they head to Gordon's house. Meanwhile, Levon is driving and gets a call for real on the school saying Gordon did not pick up Mary like he does every day. Levon speeds to his daughter's school, picks her up, and drives her to her grandpa's. On the way, Mary is confused about why her grandpa did not come get her. Levon gets worried, sensing something is wrong. When he gets to Gordon's, the whole house is on fire. He jumps out of the car, runs inside, and finds Gordon tied up on the floor. He picks him up and rushes him out of the house. Gordon then tells Levon the Russian mafia did this to him and keeps blaming him, saying it is all his fault. But Mary snaps back at her grandpa, saying Levon just saved his life. Gordon realizes he was wrong and apologizes to Levon. Levon then gets back in the car with his daughter and goes to Johnny Haas. He tells Johnny everything that happened, explaining he finally got to Demi. He tells him Demi is involved in human trafficking, so he definitely knows where Jenny is. Johnny takes him to his armory, telling him to pick whatever weapons and gear he needs for the mission. After that, Levon goes out, says goodbye to Mary and Johnny, and asks him to look out for his daughter. That night, Viper and Artie take Jenny out to the middle of nowhere to kill her, but Jenny keeps kicking them until the car crashes into a tree. She manages to freely herself, escapes, and keeps running until she spots a cop car. Unfortunately, it is the exact same corrupt cops who work for Demi's gang. They grab her and hand her over to Viper and Artie, who are just about to finish her off, but they get a call for Rowan Demi, saying he changed his mind and wants Jenny back. At the same time, Levon arrives at the club where Demi is and hears him fighting with some girl. Levon moves quietly, taking out Demi's men one by one until they are all dead. Demi grabs the girl he is with and threatens to kill her, but Levon ignores him, shoots the hand holding the gun, and severely injures him. Levon then tells the girl to grab the cash and leave. He sits down with Demi, shows him Jenny's picture, and asks about her. Demi claims he does not know her, but says he knows where the clients who buy the kidnapped girls hang out. He tells him it is a secret gambling club where businessmen from Ryan all over the world gather. Levon makes Demi ride with him to show him the way to the club, and soon they ride. Levon gets out, takes Demi with him, stops in for real of him, and asks how he can traffic girls like objects. Demi replies that all he cares about is money, so Levon shoots and kills him. He then grabs his bat to raid the place where Jenny is held. Meanwhile, Dutch gets a call about what Levon just did, and finds out he took Demi to the gambling club. So Dutch rallies all his men to go finish off Levon. The club party goes to Garrett and takes him to the room where they locked Jenny out. Jenny's hands are tied up and Garrett gets close to torture her as payback for slashing his face, but suddenly the hero bomb detonate in the building. It was Levon who set it off. He storms the club and takes out any of Demi's men that cross his path. Everyone starts panicking and rushes out of the building. Just then Dutch and his crew wife and head inside, But Levon moves with insane speed and skill, wiping out all of Dutch's men in seconds. He then gets into a brutal fight with Dutch, who is insanely strong and keeps landing hits on Levon. But Levon manages to overpower and kill him. After that, he moves out to find Jenny. He hears her screaming for Realm inside a room and rushes over. The second he spots Garrett, he shoots and kills him. Then he grabs Viper and beats him to death with his bare hands. Meanwhile, Jenny locks her legs around Artie's neck and chokes her to death. Right then, Nestor and Savvy arrive with the corrupt cops tailing them. The moment Savvy spots them, he opens fire without thinking, blowing out their car inside the club. Levon for real is Jenny for real her restraints. He takes her with him to get out, but they are caught off guard when Nestor and Savvy start shooting at them, so they take cover. Levon uses the scope on his rifle, aims at Savvy and shoots him dead. He grabs a grenade, tosses it at Nestor and blows him up. After that, he takes Jenny out of the club, gets her on the back of his bike, and they take off. But Yuri spots them, calls the mafia boss and tells him what happened. The boss replies that their mission is over and they have nothing to do with the girl or the guy with her. Yuri argues that he has to avenge his brother and his son's deaths. The boss reminds him they do not care about his personal revenge and that the mafia's interests come first. He orders him to drop it or else they will kill him. Yuri is forced to bite his tongue, hangs up and screams at the top of his lungs. Enraged, the next day Levon pulls up to Jenny's house and her family is completely stunned. They run up, hug her and thank Levon for what he did. After that, Levon goes back to his daughter, greets Johnny and his wife. They all eat together happily at the end.